My name is Toby. I'm a co-founder of Development Data Lab, and I want to introduce you to our domain by asking this question. Our organization is focused on doing research and putting out data products to share knowledge and enable decision-ready policy, evidence-based policy around the world. I want to think about ways in which we can leverage the technologies that we've been talking about all week for the benefit of the public good. Obviously, there are many perspectives on how to do this with different focal areas like overall economic growth, redistribution and equity, all kinds of things. And our opinions on the downstream outcomes from AI applications are quite diverse, ranging from near-term immediate improvements like AI tutors to the inevitable collapse of society and everywhere in between. So today, I don't want to talk about PDoom. I don't want to talk about a UBI kind of super intelligence scenario. My horizon for this question is much more near term. I want to know, what can we do right now and what should we do right now? And we believe that we start in the megacities. The developing world cities are its economic engines. They produce a disproportionate amount of GDP. The vast majority, or the majority of the world's economic growth is going to take place in these essential locations this century. And we also see the greatest density of human need in these locations. So the combination of opportunity and need in urban megacities means that we really have to be quite thoughtful about developing sensible and accurate urban policy. Unfortunately, at the moment, in developing countries, decision-ready data to back up smart policies is totally lacking, and urban policy is basically developed on some combination of vibes and the political winds. This is very bad. On the flip side, however, the opportunity to correct this is extraordinarily significant right now, and more significant than it's ever been. Tons of digital information is produced every day, but it does not reach policymakers and civil society. And we have an extraordinary chance right now to leverage these new tools and new digital data streams to improve the lives of billions. So our proposed solution, our focus for the project that I'm going to talk about today is how do we take advantage of this opportunity to deliver citizens and policymakers access to information about the performance of their own cities. So for example, a relevant question would be, which major city in India has the highest maternal mortality? This is a very simple question with extraordinarily significant social impact, but it's one that's basically been impossible to answer. And improving these kinds of outcomes is, it's just simply not going to happen if we can't measure them in the first place. So the high-level idea is we take a nice and tidy data backbone, taking advantage of novel data sources, and on top of that, we deliver insights to researchers and to decision makers through bulk access to tidy tables or to insights through some kind of analysis like analytical layer. This involves three simultaneous buckets of work. There's the unlocking of the new data sources, and I'm going to focus more on this shortly. Basic integration, and then the delivery of knowledge in a fit-for-purpose way. We really strive to minimize the frictions between users and the information that they need to answer their questions, and that means that we need to develop multiple different mechanisms to get knowledge where it needs to be. So first, unlocking new data. LLMs and GenAI are really an extraordinary superpower for us as we work to take advantage of novel data sources that we just haven't been able to touch. So one example of this is we've developed a database covering the 100 million court cases across India's lower courts since 2010. We had previously used traditional tools to scrape these data, focusing on the metadata, like decision date and case type and things of that nature, which in and of itself was a massive leap. But now we're able to directly access and engage with the decision text. Just unstructured text, but it's much more information dense and allows us to begin to answer really essential questions like, what kind of preferential treatment, if any, are criminal politicians getting within the courts? Is there discrimination along various social groups like caste, and which sections of the court are more efficient or less efficient? Really important implementation questions like that. Some of you might remember this from last year, but another transformative data set that we are developing and releasing, and this one is done, is categorizing social norms using hundreds of thousands of PDF pages from historical texts from about 100 years ago. And again, this allows us to engage with questions of like how social dynamics and economic growth interact at scale across all of India. But the project that I'm most excited about is the categorization of urban regulation across the megacities of the developing world. So these data are quite diffuse and diverse and multimodal. The aim is for us to ingest and process and harmonize things like floor area ratio regulations, setbacks, development fees, parcel and zoning maps. These data are inherently multimodal, and they're also available, though. Like across these essential cities, they're largely available on the web to be scraped, but they aren't in the hands of the people who need to be analyzing them, including the policymakers who are managing these own cities. So being able to harmonize this and ingest it for engagement with policymakers as well as concerned citizens would be really an extraordinarily significant unlock. And LLMs, especially with modern multimodal capabilities, are enabling this for the very first time. So what do we actually do, though? Across each of these three projects at a high level, there's a three-step pipeline that's very straightforward. You have to make the text machine readable. You have to structure it into analysis-ready variables. And then at the end, facilitate user engagement with both the raw information as well as any kind of analytical layer or analytical outputs on top of that. LLMs have a role to play at each of these three steps and are accelerating development timelines throughout. But excitingly, we're also finding opportunities to consolidate steps in the first place. So like we can go in and throw a PDF directly at an LLM and ask questions directly on the PDF rather than dealing with the OCR step in the first place, including transliteration or translation. And we've really had a hard time with that in the past. Traditional OCR pipelines are brittle. There's lots of edge cases. A lot of the recent tooling over the past 3 to 5 years has promised kind of green button magic, but not been able to deliver it really. So here's an example. This is the Bangladeshi building codes on the left, written in Bengali from an official government publication. The latest big model LLMs, most capable LLMs, just crush directly engaging with this document. There are images, there are tables, there's data, there are multiple different types of character glyphs, and Claude doesn't bat an eye. So this is really an extraordinary shift for us, where historically, if you use the wrong character encoding, you end up with gobbledygook. Okay, so we have found that one of the most significant and consistent bottlenecks for us as we develop and run these pipelines is data quality, QA, and evaluation. So whether it's at OCR, variable construction, or a RAG type or chatbot user functionality, at each of those steps, evaluation has been very tricky. And one of the most important issues for us is that across pretty much all of our use cases, we care a lot about type 2 error, where the models are unable to find something relevant that we know exists. And when the model returns something, whether it's a chunk or a model response of some kind, it's very easy for us to programmatically evaluate that in a variety of ways, whether it's using LLM as judge or traditional RAGAS type metrics, faithfulness, recall, etc. But those type 2 errors are pernicious, and the most reliable but also most expensive way to fix those for us has been developing test sets with human engagement. So we've ended up in a place where we basically have kind of a hierarchical ordering of different evaluation layers or steps, where at the top we have the most trust in those human-generated test sets, where we go in and we pick out stuff that we think will be hard for the model to find, and we test the model against that. So the combination of things that are easy to scale but potentially less reliable for certain types of errors with those more expensive but more targeted evaluation layers has been a really important learning for us. The other thing is, and I'll talk about this in a moment. I don't know how quickly this is going to change, but we've ended up needing to develop our own middleware and like custom internal tooling to help us evaluate the outputs of the evaluation steps and the model runs. We ended up extending LangFuse, and some of the existing middleware providers do a really good job of some of the key features that we need, logs and traces, some of the introspection of what happens in an individual model run, prompt versioning, things like that. But the combination of those key introspective capabilities with the things that are custom that we really need, like the distribution of categorical responses from one run to the next, or confusion matrices, or things that we just really, really need to see at the top, that was key for us. And eventually we ended up in a place where we realized that we need to think about the deployment of this custom tooling as focusing on just tightening the cycle times, the experimentation cycle times, as much as we possibly could. And this was a mindset shift for us, because usually we kind of like, if we're doing a pipeline, we tend to put in a bunch of upfront investment to be as careful as possible, as well tested and covered as possible, and then it's easier to maintain. But engaging with non-deterministic systems, engaging with systems with multiple components that are linked together, and agentic systems, all this makes it messy. And especially within a broader environment where the tooling and the models themselves are changing so rapidly, we really needed to make our internal testing systems as modular and as rapid and bespoke as possible. I'm not going to talk about the integration step. Our goal here was basically to be as boring as possible. But one tricky element was having a consistent geographic framework across all these cities at the city and neighborhood level, because boundaries are contested and they change over time, and this just requires a lot of domain knowledge. But as far as knowledge delivery is concerned, we're very excited about applying intelligence to make this layer better as well. So the foundation is just like a good API and a city level dashboard. And we try to do this as well as possible. Our goal is to eventually scale this out to 300 cities covering 1 billion people across poor countries around the world. But we are also quite focused on avoiding yet another data platform. We don't really care who takes credit for the data sets. We don't want to be like another data portal that nobody cares about. But we do get a lot of feedback just signaling an incredible amount of demand for direct access and interpreted access to the data. So our goal is to just put it out there as quickly as possible and see what people do with it. But we know that also highly curated analysis and engagement is a major gap, and this depends on trust. So we're focusing a lot on transparency, on very clear documentation and usability, and just being careful, building a reputation for being careful and doing it right. But the thing that I am most excited about for the dashboarding is actually the targeted application of intelligence right when the user needs it. So, I was talking about yet another data platform. We're also going to build or starting to build yet another chatbot. That's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I think there are two significant UI changes beyond the traditional chatbot interface that can be quite transformative for this kind of application. The first is spot targeted intelligence right where the user needs it. One of the biggest problems with dashboards is that you have to decide in advance what the user cares about and what to show them. So the best case scenario is you really nail a particular user type's requirements and you give them all that they need, but by construction, you're going to be failing for other user types who have different requirements. And that's like the best possible outcome. So we believe that using LLMs, you deliver the user the opportunity to drill down and to expand the information they're engaging with on demand. Like they'll go to the dashboard, they'll have a question, and then they'll be able to ask the LLM a question and immediately be provided with a structured response. And then the other one is that in the response, we think something as simple as differentiating between substantiated facts being returned to the user from editorialization will significantly increase user trust. So, for example, I mean, this is kind of a dumb mock-up, but you ask the question, is it easier to build housing in Mumbai versus Delhi? There are relevant facts in the regulatory codes that apply directly to answering this question. But there's also an opportunity to summarize the complex regulatory environment and the relationship between the different components. And LLMs will be able to do both in a way that really we haven't been able to do before. So in sum, we believe that now is an extraordinary opportunity to apply these tools for significant social impact, especially for smaller teams. Like, for example, the internal tooling to make exactly the dashboard that we need to experiment quickly. Before, that would have been really, really expensive to make. And now with AI in our IDEs and like vibe coding, it's easy to just like proliferate internal tools and to try stuff and to make them exactly what you need to be way more quickly and cheaply, especially with a small team. So shifting to that iteration first mindset and building your stack so you can cycle quickly, that's like an absolute priority. And then another significant learning is just that like, human benchmarks, human involvement is expensive, but it is the top layer of that pyramid that gives you that kind of incontrovertible trust for things that your application really requires like extra eval attention on. And then last, the application of intelligence exactly where it's needed in the UI is a game changer for us, even for like a socially driven nonprofit application. But ask me again tomorrow. This environment is changing so crazy fast that we're trying to be as responsive and modular in our solutions so we can take advantage of all the things coming down the pike. So that's all I got. I guess I would just say if you're interested in what we're doing, help us out. I'd love to connect with you. The skills, capabilities, and knowledge assembled in this building are just awesome. And I would love to speak to any one of you who are interested in contributing or just chatting about what we're doing or have any advice or critiques or whatever. So just feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or come and chat with me afterwards. Thank you.